Hello everyone, Flapjackpants here. Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Play series. If you're new to my channel, this is my 5-year plus Minecraft survival world. And if you'd like to join us for the ride, then be sure to like and subscribe. For the past few episodes, we've done a lot of work outside of the new city. But for a quick change of pace, I think in today's episode, I really want to focus on adding a few new buildings to the city itself. You know, it's been, I think, a few years in the making overall, and as you can see, there's still a lot of territory in the new city that we still need to cover. And so today, you know, I figured we'd do a little bit of work chipping away at that. As you saw in the intro, I've been collecting some mangrove wood here for an upcoming bigger project. This is probably the most tedious wood to gather in the game. And so I think the first order of business that we should get to in today's episode is to build an automatic mangrove tree farm. Well, let's get started on that. I've been crafting a lot of TNT. The past hour and a half, I think, I've just spent entirely crafting TNT. As you can see, that's about the last reserve of gunpowder I had from the old city. Unfortunately, not that much TNT in the grand scheme of things, about 2.5 shulkers only still. But that should be enough to power what we have going on in our mangrove farm. As you saw in the montage, I've also been running the bone meal farm a little bit to get some more bone blocks. I think that has been a little bit more successful, yeah. So we have 4 shulker boxes of bone blocks. I want to tell you guys the story of this guy that's been stuck in here for a couple of episodes now. The episode that we got Happy Ghasts, I just kind of left one of them. I forgot, and I think he must have floated in through one of these little crevices that connect to the surface, but by some miracle, he didn't touch any of the lava, and he's still down here. So I guess that's going to be the mascot of our bone meal farm. Without any more dilly-dallying around, though, I think it's about time we get this farm fully fueled up and give it a bit of a test drive here. I have not tested it yet, and as you can see here, I have some innovative mechanisms that I'll explain in a moment, but let's just see if this works. Alright guys, this is the moment of truth. When we flick this lever, a number of things should start happening. Yes, I need to move the bone meal into my offhand. Unfortunately, it looks like Mangrove propagule system is not functioning correctly. How about now? And alright, there we go. Now it seems to be working. Yeah, so from my point of view, all I have to do is stand here and bone meal these mangrove propagules. But actually what's going on is that there is the bone block shulker unloader, which goes into the actual mangrove propagule farm, as well as the bone meal system that's fueling me. That's all under the same bone distribution. And then there's these very simple pushers, actually, that push the actual mangrove logs into the TNT system. At first, I thought that mangrove tree farms were going to be a lot more complicated than every other type, but it actually seems like they are on the easier side of things. But yeah, stepping out here, you might realize that we're not actually harvesting the entire tree. We're kind of cutting off the logs that we harvest at roughly this point. As you can see, anything higher than this, we're not even really collecting. And the reason behind that is we need to make such a large blast chamber that it kind of ruins the vibe of the little street that we have here. Of course, the mangrove tree itself is still going to be pretty large here, but we can actually we're going to be able to cut this off here with a roof eventually. But yeah, guys, I'll harvest up some more logs, and I'll see you guys when I'm done. Alright guys, I ran the farm for about an hour, and if we check in our little shulker box storage system right here, we have close to a double chest of mangrove logs. And of course the way the storage works is once this double chest fills up, then the shulker boxes are going to start getting the overflow, and then eventually filled shulker boxes are going to end up here. But in terms of mangrove roots, we have a pretty good amount as well. But the one item we don't have is sticks. I got 0 sticks at all that entire AFK session. I guess if we're not getting sticks, then we might want to replace this storage slice with maybe more mangrove logs at some point, but I'm not sure. Every other tree farm that I have produces sticks. It's just not this one. All right, heading back into the bowels of the machine right here, I've actually changed up the redstone pretty significantly, because the way it was before, I actually couldn't really hit the propagule very well. I think it's something to do with how in the game, when you place down a propagule, it's not actually in the center of the block. I didn't really consider that when designing, and so I kind of faced issues with that. But as you can see, if we turn on the design now, everything is on 1 clock now instead of there being 2. So basically, we can turn on our auto clicker and then stay looking at this block, and then every time the piston pushers go, we get 9 bone meal and 1 mangrove propagule, and so this way we're all on the same rhythm. Another thing that I forgot to mention in the earlier recording is actually how the TNT system works here. This is a little bit different from the other tree farms that I've done, in that instead of using powdered snow drop from a little bit higher up, I actually have a timing system here, and I'm just dropping the TNT straight onto a fence gate. It basically works in the exact same way otherwise though. As you can see, I just flick this trapdoor real quick, the TNT is going to basically go down the same. All right, guys, the last thing that we need to do before we cover up this entire abomination in pretty buildings is to fill in this last middle spot right here. Just one more farm, and then we'll have pretty much this entire street done in terms of building farms. I think this spot right here could fit a wheat farm very well. For the longest time, whenever I needed hay bales or wheat, I've just been using our semi-automatic farm here inside of our bone meal farm, and just frankly, this has just not been up to spec as of late with the amount of target blocks that we're using. So without any further ado, let's get started. All right, guys, as you can see here by the length of the vines, it's been a hot second. I guess I'll explain how this wheat farm works. So basically, we have 3 layers of villagers here who help us collect and replant the wheat. And then we also have some allays that are helping us collect up the drops. And I think this is a more space efficient and lag efficient way to collect drops compared to something like hopper minecarts. There's a little timing circuit up here that pulses a note block periodically that will allow the allays to drop off their items at the note block, and everything flows into this little bulk storage system right here that automatically crafts the wheat up into hay bales and just drops off the seeds as they are. This is the exact same storage slice as the tree farm over here. I didn't know this beforehand, but actually villagers will take any excess seeds that they have and try to compost them. And so actually what that means is even if you fill up a villager's inventory with seeds, they'll eventually start composting them, and then they'll start taking some of the wheat for themselves, which they turn into bread. And so to fix this, I've actually had to place trap doors all around the composters to prevent the villagers from accessing them. Another thing I'd like to mention is that over here at our bush farm, I've added 7 more copper golems to our little bone meal distribution system, because I noticed that the one guy that was working there was actually taking ages. So I've added a bunch more guys there. They're parallelizing the bone meal distribution, and I think it's working like a charm. But with all that said, this entire farm system right here is actually completely out of control. Look at the absolute state of this place. We really need to cover this up with a good exterior. And so without any further ado, let's get started on that. Good stuff, guys. As you can see, I have finished up the first of the 3 buildings that we're going to have, or maybe 4 to 6 to 7, depending on how you count them. As you can see, this covers the main part of the mangrove tree farm, the blast chamber, and it also covers up part of the storage for both the wheat farm and the mangrove farm. As you can see, I have not done any work on the interior yet. We'll be saving that until the very end. But yeah, I really like how this building came together. I think it mirrors the trading hall next to it very well. They kind of blend together in style. There's going to be kind of like a style gradient going from kind of this more windowy style to something a little bit different over here. That's something that I want to start experimenting more. Previously, I just kind of throw together buildings of all different styles, but I want to kind of keep a little bit more continuity now. Now, as you can see here with the highlights on the trims here, I actually used a very subtle gradient going from mangrove planks to strip logs to sideways strip logs, eventually to crimson logs. And I think this is a very interesting way to do gradients. I've never like flipped blocks on their sides before. That kind of makes me think what possibilities there are. Maybe, for example, with deep slate, I think flipping that on its side could be something we could try in the future. Another new thing I did was use coal right here. This is the first time I've used like coal as like a building block, if you can see it over there. I think it blends very nicely with the andesite and the smooth stone. Over here in the back, there's a big old chomp taken out of it, and that's because this is where another building is going to like poke outwards. So I've just omitted it for now. Another thing that I think I can point out from here is that I've added a lot more of these kind of chateau-esque windows to our trading hall. And I think not only does that make our roof look a little bit less boring, but from further distances, I think it makes the shape of the build come more alive together as well. Like, as you can see, it kind of feels more like a connected building instead of 3 separate ones. And I really, really like the effect of these small windows. Overall, I really like how this building turned out, and I think it's about time we work on the other end of the gradient, the building that's going to cover up our bush farm. All right, guys, I think I got properly carried away here. As you can see, I've fully finished the exterior for this entire street, pretty much. This building, this is kind of like the least noteworthy, I suppose. Like, there's elements here, such as this bottom, that you can see like in other places, kind of like it's mirrored over here in this building. It's a very similar idea. And of course, the pinkish tones here, very reminiscent of the roof of our trading hall. And yeah, there's kind of not much to say about this building. I haven't filled in this window because this is actually directly where our bush farm copper golem area is. It's going to be nice to like actually have a window here. And that goes for a lot of these windows. Like I'll knock out the wool here and put in actual glass. But yeah, this building right here is kind of the meat and potatoes of the view of the street, I guess. And I really like how it came together, how it's slightly asymmetrical. In particular, the section where the door is doesn't actually line up with the roof because there's this tower here. I think it's slightly wobbly, but in just the perfect way. And I also really like my block choice as well, using the new mangrove that we got, along with brick, red terracotta, and also dirt. Dirt is a really underrated building block. People don't use dirt enough. I mean, it's a very nice, rich color, and it blends pretty nicely with the reds that I have here. I've also used hanging signs here, which is the first time I've used them, but I think they provide a lot more depth and detail here to these cross sections. The roof here, or I guess not the roof, but I don't know what this is called, like the section right below the roof, I actually really quite like this. It's very simple. It's like a checkerboard of pillars and signs, but I think with the gradient that we put on it, it comes together really well. These towers are also pretty simple, but I like how they come together, especially this one right here, especially with the windows. It's a very complex shape overall for the window, but I think it's kind of like arch-ish. We might replace this with like a slab instead, so it's more rounded. But the reason I didn't do that is because the actual part of it that's dark here is kind of more the relevant part of the arch. So like from a distance, it'll look like the window is like this instead of the full actual area. But yeah, that brings us to the back view, and I actually really like how this came together as well. In particular, again, this back section here, which is fully exposed right here. I think it blends together nicely with the kelp farm, the kind of color scheme. Unfortunately, the roof does not line up. It's one block off, which is a little bit annoying, but I just couldn't get it to line up perfectly. From some angles, it looks like it might line up. This is kind of like a much more complex shape to our kelp farm, which I really like. I guess last of all, I want to talk about kind of this top little area here. So the reason I have this is because if we like look in one block in, yeah, that's where like all of our leaves are. The reason we need to keep all this area blocked off instead of just continuing the roof straight across, cutting through the leaves, is because that's actually how the trees grow. So if we cut off too much of the leaves, then the trees that can grow are much shorter, if that makes any sense. So yeah, like from a distance, I actually don't like how the top building kind of awkwardly flattens out the whole pointy view of the skyline. It's a little bit intrusive, but it's just, we have to have that there
because otherwise that'll interfere with the mangrove tree farm rates. But overall, I quite like how this entire street came together. And, you know, this is like the beating heart of our city right here. But unfortunately, still zero work done on the interior. This place is an actual mess at this point. Without any further ado, this is the last part that we have to get done, the interior of all of these buildings. Let's get started. Alright guys, I've just about finished the interior for all of the buildings that we've worked on in today's episode. Let's take a look inside. This first building is a lot more on the simpler side. The focus is very much still on the storage. Everything else here, like the potted plants, the paintings as well, it's all kind of more secondary, but I do like how I've split this entire large room that we had earlier with all the vines and stuff into two smaller sections, and the transition between them is framed with this elegant doorway here. I think this really helps to contextualize these as two different rooms. This door right here is the entrance from the middle building, so they're both connected this way. I have this little grandfather clock here that I quite like. It's using the new shelves here. This fence is kind of like the pendulum. It's not the greatest, but a chain was kind of too thin, so that's how we made this grandfather clock. Overall, I'm not sure how the vines spread horizontally, so I might get rid of these earlier, but this isn't too bad, all things considered. Again, very much on the simpler side. I would say in the middle here, the problem is I just wasn't sure how to exactly have like paintings and shelves and decorations when we want to have a display of our villagers. Maybe we could like break this large set of windows up into like a grid of smaller windows and then like cover some of them with paintings, but I just wasn't really sure how to do that, so I've left it blank for now. The second interior that we did was actually the second floor of our acacia and cherry farm. This is the one with all the copper golems, and I think this one came together decently well, all things considered as well. I really like the ceiling that we have here. This is kind of like a more old school ceiling, you know, you might see this sometime around 2018, 2019, but I think it still works really, really well. The lanterns here kind of dangling make it feel a lot more rustic than the other one. Again, the centerpiece is like this glass view of entities being unfortunately enslaved, but you know, everything else just kind of focuses around that, and I think it works well. I think interiors, very much this one especially, are just kind of a case of throwing junk on the wall and seeing what sticks. So it's kind of a random hodgepodge of things, but I think overall they kind of complement each other in a nice way. The actual access to the bone block shulkers are right here, kind of set into the wall, which I really like to do with some of these smaller things. And yeah, you can still get full access to everything. There's a lot of, you know, auxiliary storage that I've just left everywhere. You know, you never know when you'll need a couple of extra barrels. Something I'd like to point out here is this advanced moss plant that I made. I really like how this came together. And I think I'll be doing some more interesting stuff with like azalea bushes and pots, because these are like really flexible, the way they line up next to the blocks. You could even use this in like exterior builds. I've been thinking a lot about that as well. Like maybe this is some kind of pillar. In this room, this is where we access the actual tree farm itself. I've used, you know, these trapdoors to really cover up the farm, and I think I've done a pretty good job of that. It's just getting into and out of the farm is a lot more confusing, because you really are in the guts of the machine. And, you know, there's just really no way to make this part pretty. So actually, believe it or not, but there's a third interior that I made in today's episode. And it's actually part of the hotel building from way back when. And this might be a bit of a surprise, but actually, this is how we actually get to the mangrove tree farm itself. So there's this extra layer I added to this little staircase. Before, this was like the ceiling, but now I've punched through it. You can see right here, mangrove operators only. This is the little access here to the tree farm itself. And I think this is my best interior that I've done today. This is such a nice little area. I really like the supports for the roof. The cobwebs have just that little extra bit of character to this little workplace here. But yeah, this is like in the lore of this world. This is like where the operator of the mangrove tree farm will reside on his shift. So he'll be plugging away at the tree farm overnight or during the day. And, you know, there's this little office, a little fireplace for breaks. Overall, a really nice area. I think the paintings here, more than any other interior, I think really complement kind of the style of the entire interior. And I think it's because of the way the lines in the walls kind of look like a grid, and they combine with the floor as well. But these paintings really break that up, and they introduce just that little extra splash of color and saturation that I think really makes this place all tie together perfectly. Something that I'd like to point out with all these interiors in general is that normally I'd put a lot of like smaller mini farms in like these big areas that are still unused. But if you have noticed, it's been about 2 years since the start of our new city project, and we've still barely filled about 1/4 of the total area that we've planned, and I'm already starting to run out of unique farm ideas. I think the future of this project is honestly going to be covering more ground with the same number of farms, and so that's why I've left those little spaces empty for now and unfinished. Speaking of being unfinished, the area to the mangrove farm itself. Okay, this entire place is still jank as heck. You know, we have this funny little staircase down to the actual farm, and then the access to the bone meal is through this place, which is like a lot worse. We have to like climb up the former roof of the hotel, which is now covered, just to get to the shulker boxes. So I don't know if I'm going to work on this in the future. Maybe I'll add like an extra little room there for the bone meal, but for now, this is just the current state of the bone meal farm. All right, guys, that brings us to the comment of the day. Today's comment is from Attaxolotl, and they say, another spectacular creator with top-tier editing, shafted by the algorithm, broken heart emoji. It means a lot to me that you consider my videos to be top-tier editing, because I've spent a lot of work trying to improve that over the past few episodes. But overall, I've actually thought about this comment for a little bit of time now, and I've actually decided, you know, what my actual goals are with this channel. You know, why did I start making these videos? You know, it was never about building like this massive media empire, making all this money. Like, that was never really the point. It was bringing together, you know, people like you, Attaxolotl, together into a small community of people that, you know, like building, like Minecraft, like having adventures. That's kind of the most important thing. Having a large community in number, I don't think is as important as having one in quality spirit. You know, of course, having a larger community and having, you know, a very close-knit one would be great, but, you know, if I ever had to choose between one or the other, then I'd rather be, you know, a quote-unquote underrated gem at like, you know, a couple hundred subscribers than this big bloated million subscriber YouTuber, you know, screaming into the camera, making videos for 5-year-olds. You know, that's just not really what I want to do. When you look at it that way, you know, I don't edit really for retention. I don't do all these, obnoxious tricks that, in theory would grant me more performance, but I think would really sacrifice a lot of the character of this channel. And so overall, I think however I end up in the algorithm, I'm okay with it. This is a hobby that I enjoy doing just for the sake of fun. And so as long as I can, I will still be here. But all right, putting that into our comments shelf, that is the end of today's episode. I want to thank you guys so much for the support on the last episode. It's the most viewed video in my Let's Play series as of now, over 1,000 views, and that really means a lot to me. I think we really crossed a milestone there. And so let's see how this video does in the algorithm. Yeah, if you guys are new to the channel and you've made it all the way here, be sure to like and subscribe and join us for the journey that's to come. Sorry this video took so long to make. College has kicked me in the ass, to put it lightly, but I'll still be here. I'll still be making videos. With that all being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I have been Flapjackpants. Goodbye.